Welcome to the Lloiden Garza Podcast. I'm your host, Lloiden Garza. Thank you for joining us on our 7th episode. In our last episode, we talked a little bit about the automatic responses, more of the biological processes in our central nervous system. And I really feel that, to know these automatic responses are really important for us to be able to be aware and empower us to be able to make choices versus a reaction. And so, in that context, I want to continue to explore our automatic responses. One topic that I really want to, really focus on because of those automatic processes, they can come in many ways. One that I'd like to focus on because it has come up in conversation with some of the listeners that tune in is more of the automatic defensive responses. And I think it's a really important topic to be able to explore what those look like for us. I don't know, what yours looks like exactly when you get angry or get triggered or get defensive. But I will share with you some of what I've seen in my moments and some of the tools that I use that I'm hopeful that you'll be able to use as well. I know for me, as far as in the defensive nature or the automatic processes with that I feel that for myself, that over the years, that the intensity of what has happened or how I respond has definitely has lessened, over the time. And it doesn't mean, and I think this is important to know, dear listener, that we're human, and that you could be working very well on your awareness of your emotions, of being able to respond, but at the same time, no, we're human. And so it's that trying over and saying, how do we improve? How do we improve our reactions? How do we improve our well-being? And a lot also has to do with the self-control and what really is that, right? So it's like, and is that really ever perfect, that you're not going to ever do anything, and respond that you don't want to respond? So I don't think that really is that it ever goes away, but it's how we respond and that intensity of what comes our way and how we handle that, I think, over time gets not as intense and does get a little bit easier and better. So again, I'm not saying it ever goes away, but I think that having these types of tools that will help you will definitely give you, empower you with, being able to react differently. So let's dive into that and how that really looks like. I want to share with you about how I remember for me, and I know that I've shared this before about those words like shrinking and puffing up. I say that often because I think it's important. That's how I kind of recognize and signal for my own self of identifying how I'm feeling at a certain moment. And I know in the past what I said was when I feel like I'm shrinking is, it's something that I can feel, I can identify, right? That is a big thing, is to be able to say, how am I feeling right now? What's going on? And being able to recognize that at that moment, being present, I think is so powerful, because in the past, I did not recognize what I was doing until days later, weeks later, months later. And so it was definitely a very different time frame of the recognition. So even that, recognizing how I was feeling and even being able to, be more present in that it's a big improvement. So in that context, what I want to talk about is, that puffing up and shrinking. Okay. It's is for me, I know there was situations what I had with family or friends that when we were talking about something that maybe we didn't agree upon, or like you see in my book in the, that a few of the chapters mentioning the situation with my mom, where there were moments that, I was angry and my mom was very strong in what she was saying, but I just shrank there at the moment. I just didn't want to say anything. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say anymore. And I just knew I pulled back, because I didn't want to, hear her yelling, or I didn't want her to withdraw her love from me. And I remember feeling like, if I continue to say something, if I say something that she's not going to like, that she's going to, to stop talking to me or withdraw her love from me, or she was going to yell at me or something like that. And so I found myself shrinking at those moments. And then, of course, when I say puff up, it was just times where, there was moments I was frustrated already when I, went to a person multiple times and asked them in different ways and give them opportunity, to the point when they're, really being harsh with you. I found myself puffing up like, oh my gosh, like, this is enough. I want to yell, I want to scream, and this is not okay. And so there was a different approach of the shrinking or the puffing up. But again, I use these words because the more you're able to identify, the better it is for us to be able to recognize when it is going on. So, anyway, I wanted to be able to kind of share with that first of all. And in that context, I want to share with you that something as far as in the defensive portion, right? Because some things are so automatic. Someone could say something and it can activate this idea or this belief or this meaning or this energy, this spirit, that you're like, no, or they did something that reminded you of what somebody else did. And so you respond or you react really a certain way. And so it's really saying that, the goal is not to just react, right? Like react from fire to fire. It's to respond, is to be able to create that space, and that you're actually saying it's not an automatic process. It's not like, boom, you said something and here I am and I'm gonna bite you back. You bit me, I'm gonna bite you back. No, it's creating that space to actually have that freedom to pause and to actually then respond from that heart space. And so I say that because, I want to share with you that I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who was, just very strong in their opinion about something. And I remember that we did not share the same opinion. And I was feeling at that moment that I remember that, I didn't realize it exactly at that moment, but within minutes of what was going on. And so I remember this person was talking and talking about what they believed in and what they thought was the right thing to do. And I didn't share the same opinion. And as we're talking, I started realizing that the tone that we had for each other was starting to be more argumentative on, or, it's kind of getting louder and a little bit louder. And I remember that I started engaging in that. I was just reacting to the moment. And then all of a sudden, I remember thinking to myself how I had to remind myself that this friend is not my rival, and that I do not need to compete, nor do I need to win that conversation. And that this friend of mine, that our bonds of friendship were stronger than our opinions. And that was really very powerful for me. And why I'm sharing that with you is that I know that, in the family that I came from, that especially the hierarchy of whether it is, the age and so forth, elders, that they were right. They believed that their age, it wasn't even about whether or not what they said was right. It was this position that they are right. And in those moments, it's recognizing that, are you just trying to be right, or are you trying to do what's right? And I think it's really important to be aware that if you come from that family background and you've been in the condition in that environment, that there might be times that you model something that was modeled to you. It's like, hey, they're supposed to be right, or they're supposed to be your family, and they're supposed to be your friend, and you're supposed to agree. And that's not true. We do not have to agree with everything that our friends or family shares with us. And it's not a disrespectful thing. It's just that why we're so, unique and different, is that we don't have to agree with everything. But it's important to recognize that our bonds are stronger than those opinions. And I think that was really important for me. Like, I still have to remember and remind myself that when I start to feel like I'm being defensive, if I start to feel like I need to prove a point, it's to recognize like what's going on right now. Why am I feeling this way? What is happening inside me that I have to feel like I need to win? And I think that that's really important to be honest with yourself, because that is really the clarity. If you're not honest with yourself, if you're not willing to look to say, what are these automatic behaviors? Why am I acting like I need to win this conversation? Why is it like I have to be the one I prove my point? It doesn't. I think that people are entitled to their opinion, and especially depending on the situation, I mean, depending on what's going on, I think that it is important to recognize when there are those automatic responses that we have, and that it's important to ask yourself, like, what's more important here? Is it to be right, or is it to do what's right? And so having a little of that buffer, of having that pause and having that recognition of what's going on. And so that's something that I'm still working on. And what I think what's great about this awareness and about wisdom is that I don't think there's ever an ending on learning wisdom, is learning how to integrate what you feel with what you think, or what you think with what you feel, what you learn and what you do. I think that is so important, is to live in congruency, live in that authentic, genuine place. And that is what I want to share with you, is being able to say, here's a tool, be aware. And I think that is important for us to recognize what we're doing. Remember, we can't control what other people do, but we can definitely decide how to respond to that, is having that freedom to do that. So that is really what I want to share with you tonight, is more of the automatic processes in our behavior. I think that there is this topic is so huge and so important because it affects us in different ways. I plan to touch on it a further on a different episode, and I really want to be able to go further into and explore how that looks like in different ways. But again, I wanted to share that with you and hope that when you find yourself in that situation, it's just even that pause. And sometimes it's, you might just react, but even recognizing that you reacted versus you responded is powerful. We have to start somewhere. And I hope that, that whoever is listening to this now is going to be able to use that and be able to know, hey, I want to, you know, work on that. I want to empower myself more with that. I want to have that freedom to be able to respond versus just react. I want to know, am I just trying to be right than doing what's right? So I think that those are important things. And I just want to continue to encourage you, dear listener, to explore, to challenge old ways of thinking, and to have more freedom and joy and light in your life. Thank you again for tuning in, and I will look forward to sharing with you more next week.